it just felt like after a few years, and by now we had 6 children, that my devotion time with my kids was becoming kind of rote, just kind of dull. And I saw my kids yawning, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm making the greatest story ever told boring to my children. And how do I stop that? How do I make that better? And so that's what kind of spurred me on to start writing that first book. And it was my passion for my children to really get hold of a fresh take on the gospel.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says, you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today it is my pleasure to have a conversation with Chuck Black, author of the Kingdom series and many other beloved books. Chuck sometimes refers to himself as an accidental author because writing was never on his list of things to do. After some amazing experiences pursuing other passions, Chuck found himself in a place where he felt the need to write a story for his own children. And that was the beginning of something beautiful. Chuck and I also talk about the importance of leaning into home, being courageous enough to take the next step, even when the path ahead may not be perfectly clear, and most importantly, listening to God even when it doesn't make sense. I know you will be encouraged by Chuck's story as much as I am. Let's listen.
So I was the last of 7 children in my family.
7.
And my parents had a girl, and then they had 6 boys, and I was the last of 7 boys. So by the time my memory kicked in, my sister was gone and out of the house. So all I remember is a house full of lots of boys, lots of wrestling, lots of testosterone, lots of anything with a ball. And so and my brothers were all very athletic. They were kind of the studs of the school and that sort of thing. And I actually was more of an introvert, kind of skinny, shy kid. But I was very, very, I tended a little bit different direction than them, although I did participate in all the sports and athletics like them. I really enjoyed science and technology and school. I really focused on my studies. And so I loved to create things. I ended up being very much I could see early on that I wanted to invent and build and design and create. And the Lord has just allowed me to live that life in just a unique way. And I'm still getting to do that, which is really, really fun. So, but my brothers were all amazing men. They treated me with the utmost kindness and respect. And I have the most... just the greatest things to say about them. But we certainly definitely took kind of different paths in life. And so later on, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so throughout school, when did you notice? Was it like middle school when you really noticed you were interested in more of the science technology, or was that later in high school?
Actually, it was in grade school.
Really?
I'd say 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah.
My one of our teachers had an invention. We were studying inventors, and she had us each student come up with an invention and design it and build it, and I just that's when I just knew, this is for me. So,
Well, how old were you when you invented your first invention?
I was in probably 4th grade. And I invented a device that you could lay in bed and push a button, and it would automatically open your curtains and turn off your light for you. So that, because I like to look at the stars at night, so you get dressed for the night and you get in bed and you push this button, and then it shuts your lights off and opens the window so you could.
And this was 4th grade?
Yeah.
Okay, that's phenomenal. I don't know if I could come up with that now, but it would be nice, right? That's great. So you kind of knew that part of yourself early on, and how did that impact like what you were doing when you were in middle and high school and thinking about, your future and what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So it definitely caused me to think about, what kind of a career would I be able to jump into and explore this part of me that God had woven into my life. And I wanted to be an engineer for sure. I just wasn't sure which kind, an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer or an aeronautical engineer. And so I just started really focusing on maths and sciences and that sort of thing. All along the way, I never really, I was good with English and writing and that sort of thing, but I never had a real passion for it. It's just something that was, I think, kind of tapped into my creative side of me. And so that was kind of in the background of my life as this was going on. But eventually I decided that I wanted to get into electrical engineering because I just loved the idea of, I knew it was going to be a career that was going to continue to change rapidly and advance quickly.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be part of that push. So
what did you do with your free time during your high school years?
I built model rockets.
Oh.
and I was constantly building, designing, inventing, creating things. I couldn't get enough of it.
So that really was your space, always.
Yep.
That's great.
It always has been. Yeah, always has been. But I learned to love to enjoy reading. I was a freshman in high school and I had some study hall, and I went down to the library and I picked up a book by John Christopher called The Tripods, and it just opened up a world of adventure to me that I hadn't really explored very much of in the past. And from that moment on, I just became a voracious reader. And so I think reading fed my creative side and started to kind of prepare me for what might come later on as an author. So
that's interesting. I can remember the book that I picked up and read. It was a Scholastic book fair, actually. And it changed my whole thought about what reading, the worlds that reading can, it wasn't that I had never read a book. It was just that book, it turned it on for me. So I can understand. So then you went on then from high school and chose a path in college. Where did you go? How did your family get started? Kind of what was that next phase for you?
Yeah. So you asked about what I do with my free time. Well,
oh yeah.
when I was a junior in high school, I met this really pretty girl named Andrea.
She is pretty.
I was a basketball player, and she was the cheerleader. Kind of that quintessential high school romance thing, and we quickly just fell head over heels in love with each other. So that became a big part of my life the last year and a half of my high school and then into college. But it didn't change my passion for studies or engineering or anything. And she says, yeah, when I started dating Chuck, I became a really good student because I knew that we were going to spend half of our dates just studying. So that sounds pretty boring, but anyway, so I went to North Dakota State University and got a degree in electrical and electronic engineering. Andrea and I got married my junior year there, and so she knew that I was also a very patriotic individual. My dad served in World War II. My brother served during the Vietnam era, and I'd always wanted to serve our country. I was actually looking at the Air Force Academy in high school and had given them an application. Things just didn't quite work out there. And so my last year of college, there was this advertisement that came along saying, hey, if you join the Air Force, we'll pay for your last year of school. And by then, things were getting a little tight. We were married. And so Andrea came and she said, you always wanted to serve. Why don't you take a look at this? And so I joined that program, and they did pay for that last year for me. And then that was the open door into the Air Force, where I spent 9 years after that. So that was a whole nother adventure for Andrea and I, and that's where we began our family. It's where traveled the world as a tactical combat communications engineer, and then later on applied for pilot training and became a pilot. That was the other goal from when I was in grade school, was to fly jets as a fighter pilot. And so
you got to do that.
I did get to do that too. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. So you served for 9 years?
I did. Yes.
And you accomplished a lot in that time. And really, but what would you say was your greatest takeaway from serving in the military?
Oh my goodness. The greatest, there's a number of them. One that comes to mind is just extreme gratitude for the freedom we have as Americans in this world, and really the incredible privilege we have to belong to such an incredible freedom experiment, and just to be grateful for that, and to have sympathy and compassion for those that don't, and as believers in Christ, it says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. And man, that is absolutely true, especially here in America, but I know it's talking spiritually, but just that whole concept of freedom. So I think that was a big part of it. So gratitude. The other big takeaway is that it wasn't always just wonderful in the Air Force, but the things that weren't wonderful, if you apply yourself and just kind of hug the cactus, as I think I heard somebody say once, carry your cross.
Yeah.
The Lord can turn even the most difficult situations into incredible blessing. So and a short example that would be when I first joined, I got assigned as a combat communications officer, a tactical combat communications officer, and it was not a pleasant position. It was hard work. We traveled the world, and I, lived in tents.
Oh yeah.
Carried M16s and fought chiggers and tarantulas, and yet that was the thing. That was the 3 years of that life gave me the opportunity to apply for pilot training and get accepted. And so God turned those challenging years into incredible blessing.
Yeah.
And so, just to be patient on the Lord and just walk in and trust in His promises. So.
What was it that made you decide to move, to the next thing at that point? Because you had reached and achieved those goals, with the pilot license and ability to fly jets. So what shifted your path at that point?
Oh, it's such a good question, Suzanne. Honestly, we were talking about that moment when you're reading a book and something triggers. That happened to me too. I was being trained in my operational squadron at Shaw Air Force Base as an F-16 pilot. And I was supposed to go to Desert Shield, which quickly turned into Desert Storm. Most of my squadron had deployed, but I was in my final days of training. And at the very last minute before I was deployed, Desert Shield turned into Desert Storm. They started dropping bombs. And so the commander that was in charge of the operation at the time, he called me into his office after I got certified. And he said, Chuck, we're not going to send you over there. We're going to send you to Squadron Officer School in Alabama. So my whole squadron had deployed to Iraq, and I got sent to Alabama instead. So but little did I realize it was a divine appointment that the Lord had set up for me, because I met a man there that discipled me and just gave me a whole different perspective on life and family and fatherhood. And it really just God used that 7 weeks to disciple my heart and turn my heart toward home. By then we had 3 small children, and it just birthed a whole new passion for children and for raising my family the way I was supposed to, according to, being obedient to the Lord and leading my home spiritually.
Right.
That just changed everything. And so, that was the catalyst that pushed me to the next part of my life. And when Desert Storm ended, they were looking at reducing, scaling down the military. And so even though I had many years of commitment left on my service because of my pilot training, they said that I could exit without fulfilling those if I wanted to. And so I was looking at a remote tour to Korea away from my family for a year. And I thought, I just don't want to do that. The way, not the way the Lord has, it says in Malachi, 4:6 that the Lord will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. And that's what was happening to me at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I decided to exit the Air Force and give up my lifelong dream of being a, fighter pilot and that sort of thing. I'd already enjoyed so much of it. So, and I decided to just settle into that role of being a father and a husband and leading my family biblically. And so my brothers and my dad had started a plastics company back in Williston, North Dakota, and they wanted to have a product design engineer. And so they created a spot for me to come back home. And so I exited the Air Force and came back to Williston, North Dakota, where I settled into an adrenaline-less life of product design engineer and just raising my family. And that little did I realize that there was a lot more adventure to come. But I was just trying to be obedient to the heart that God had given me.
Yeah, that's great. So, and you were able to go back home and be near your family and really invest in your home. And so how did your path kind of lead you into the places that, where you began writing, where you began creating in other areas? And along the way, did you create anything as inventions that we should know about, things that are exciting and happening? Because I know the plastics world might be a little boring, but right?
Yeah. So interesting. Very insightful, Suzanne. That move home actually did some incredible things for me that I just never saw coming. I did get to tap into my engineering life again, which I was starting to miss. And as a product design engineer, I did invent a number of things for the company that actually helped us to survive and thrive as a plastics company. And they're not super exciting inventions, but I have about 15 patents to my name because of that. And then in that process also, we were competing on a global market with China. And so we had to really get efficient in how we were producing things. And so I became more of an automation engineer, which I really loved. It was back to my days of being in grade school where I was turning on motors and sensors and just having actions and actuators and all kinds of things. And so I got to automate the whole company over the course of about 12 years. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm actually an automation, as CEO of an automation company. So that just fills a big need in my heart to be creative. And so that was a big part of that. But the other half of my life was birthed out of that passion to come home and be with my family. And that was having devotions with my children. It just felt like after a few years, and by now we had 6 children, that my devotion time with my kids was becoming kind of rote, just kind of dull. And I saw my kids yawning, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm making the greatest story ever told boring to my children. And how do I stop that? How do I make that better? And so that's what kind of spurred me on to start writing that first book. And it was my passion for my children to really get hold of a fresh take on the gospel. So,
well, tell us a little bit about it, because you were busy as an inventor as a small child. Where did you get your characters and your approach that you decided to take with this, and how did you do some of that development in your mind?
Well, I think that probably goes back to that love of reading that began when I was a freshman in high school, and I started reading all kinds of work, from science fiction all the way back to the medieval times, and King Arthur and the Round Tables. The medieval time was really fascinating to me. I love the thought of gallant, noble characters, and so when that moment came for me to think about a story for my kids, it was just kind of already in place. I just didn't realize it, and I just tapped into that. And all of the symbolism of the medieval days, knights in armor and swords and shields and helmets and castles. And it was such a natural, easy translation into an allegorical form of the gospel that I can't really take any credit for being that creative because it just spilled out of me in a very natural way with the gospel. I mean, Ephesians 6 and the armor of God is just, it's like it was written for the medieval times, you know. So I just kind of cut and paste, and it just kind of flowed out of me. The Lord just gave that first story to me one night in the middle of the night as I was praying. Lord, how do I keep this alive in the hearts of my children? And I want them to get excited about this. And so He just started feeding me this story, and I wrote for I got up in the middle of the night and wrote for about 4 hours, and it was Kingdom's Edge, the middle book in the Kingdom series. And so the next time we had devotions with our kids, I said, kids, we're going to do something different. I'm just going to read a story too and just see what you think about it. And so I started reading that story, and the transformation of my children was just dramatic. I mean, they were on the edge of their seats, and their mouths were open, their eyes were big, and they were so excited. And
that's incredible.
It's interesting, Suzanne. My response to that, though, was actually disappointment. Because I thought, why should my fictional story get them excited about the Bible when I want the Bible to do that? And so I was just kind of discouraged. And the Lord just kind of gently reminded me that, people love story. And that's why Jesus was a great storyteller. And He told parables, which were allegories. And He did that to get the hearts and the imaginations of the people enraptured, and then He would tell them, and this is what that means. And the impact is just so much more powerful. So people have asked me, how come you chose allegory? And my response is, I didn't really, it kind of chose me. And so I just think in terms of symbolism and metaphor. And so it just comes out in the form of story.
I think that's, incredible for me as the mom. I mean, and we've known each other for a lot of years, but my kids grew up on your stories. And, part of that was me trying to be so diligent about what they were reading. And my son, who could read faster than I could read anything and keep up with him. So, I mean, it really started there. But what you're saying is so true because he's in his mid-20s now, going into youth ministry. I have a younger daughter who's serving, and she's mentoring younger girls. And for both of them, as they have grown up and now gone into a place where they're trying to serve and mentor, your books are what they take with them into those mentoring phases where they're trying to help kids deal with, vices and virtues and applying scripture to their lives. And you're right when you say it does bring them in. The story brings them in. And then you can really share the gospel with them and help them see it and see it and understand it in ways they may never have without the story. And so, excuse me, I love that because I have seen the transformation. And I have a child who loves to read the Bible. My kids love reading the Bible, but the story just drives them. It's so interesting to watch. But so I'm a full appreciator of all of your works and what you've written and what you bring to our kids and our families through story. But I know that you didn't stop with that first one. So tell me kind of like, when did it click for you that this was going to be? Because it's funny for me to hear that you are running an automated, what did you call it? Automated engineering company. I didn't even realize that was still part of what you did, but it's incredible. But, where did you shift to the, books would become so important and so permanent in your life and what you were doing? That kind of happened
gradually. I wrote that first story, and the kids were, enthralled with it. I finished it up and polished it a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe there's something here. But I call myself the accidental author because I never really planned on becoming an author. It just wasn't in my bucket list. And so, but I did, the Lord started to really push me to explore, maybe there's some sort of ministry impact that this could have, the story. And so we were traveling to a nearby city, and my wife was so busy with 6 children and homeschooling. And so to get her to read something like that would be difficult. But I got her in the car, trapped her in the car, and put that first manuscript in her lap and asked her to read it. And she took a big sigh, and then she started reading it, and she just didn't stop until 2 hours later. And she looked at me with some tears rolling down her cheeks, and she said, "Chuck, you have to share this with the rest of the world." And so that's really kind of the thing that my wife has always been such great motivation behind all of the things I've done, from the Air Force to writing to all of it. And so I'm so grateful to her. And so that pushed me to, we talked, well, how are we going to do this? We didn't really want to take years and years and go through a publisher. So we just decided to self-publish, which we did. And we took that first little book to a homeschool conference in North Dakota, and the staff at the state level was just so willing and open to, they just put up a table out of the blue, and pretty soon the books just started flying. And one book led to 4 books, and we just couldn't keep up. It was just like, it became overwhelming. And every time, and the irony of this whole thing, Suzanne, is I actually prayed for the Lord to stop it many times. I said, "Lord, if this isn't you, then shut it down. I don't want to be wasting my time or your time doing something that doesn't add or contribute to the gospel. And so just stop it, and I'll walk away from it today." And I prayed that, dozens of times. And every time I prayed that, the opposite happened. It just, another opportunity would happen. And pretty soon we were just, finally one evening, it was about 3 a.m. I was just exhausted, working as an engineer full time. I was helping Andrew homeschool and then writing books. And I just said, "Lord, I just realized I've never asked you to bless this, but I'm also exhausted. So I need you to take this from me and get it in the hands of, if you really want this, if this is really you." And so I just fell on my knees and prayed that prayer. And within just a couple of weeks, God brought Multnomah Publishing in my path through a friend. And it just like exploded. And they went, 4 books turned to 6 books. They took it over and got fantastic covers, went through the full editing process, and got it fully officially published. And that's when it kind of launched and took on a life of its own here, Suzanne. And which is why I'm talking to you today, because one book turned into 6, turned into 12, then 15, and now we're at like 24. So
that's crazy. So you started with the medieval characters and books, but some of the other ones that you started writing for, I would guess, more like teens or young adults, took on different genres. Where do you find your happy place right now? Like, what really drives you in those different places to write?
Well, yeah, you mentioned there, I started out medieval, so I did 12 books in that medieval, make-believe world of Arithtre, to teach biblical history and strongholds and that sort of thing. But then I turned to The Wars of the Realm, which is a three-book modern day spiritual warfare, sort of a Jason Bourne, CIA, FBI, a little bit of Captain America in there, but angelic depiction as well, a little Frank Peretti-ish kind of tone to it. And that really seemed to resonate with a lot of my readers, and I really enjoyed that. But that was definitely probably one of my more challenging projects.
How was it challenging for you?
Well, it was my first work that was not allegory. So I had to fully create the story from scratch.
Yeah.
I had no template. So there was that. And my effort in this series was, I always felt like if I had a pair of special glasses that I could put on the eyes of my children so they could see into the spiritual realm for even just a couple of minutes, it would change how they live the rest of their life forever. If they could just see the spiritual warfare that was going on. So my goal for the Wars of the Realm was to have them be the spiritual glasses that young people put on so they could see into that realm. So I tried to stay as biblically aligned as possible in depicting that spiritual warfare. But obviously there's a lot of space for speculation because the Bible is a little bit silent on a lot of that. So, but I didn't want to violate any of the precepts of Scripture on spiritual warfare. So, and I have discovered that the teens and the young people just are just hungry for that. They're hungry for a taste of what that world is in reality. And so that series really kind of gives that to them. And so there's a lot of extreme enthusiasm for that series in particular. So I did enjoy that. I always felt like Captain America and The Matrix and all these movies are epic and fun, but they just miss the mark of truth. And so I wanted to capture those fun elements, but wrap them in truth. And so that's what that's about. So it was challenging.
We listened to those dramatized audios so many times. Driving.
Okay.
We travel a lot. But it was one of the favorites. And it is an incredible series. And then after that, you went into the next, which was a little bit more Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of full circle for me. It kind of brought me back to my very first love, which is science fiction, science and technology and space. And that's really when it is as a kid back in grade school, that's where my brain was. That's where I lived. And so this has been fun to return to that. A science fiction series that basically a little bit looser allegory, but still a metaphorical representation of the journey of humanity, especially the Jewish people up until Christ, through history and God's interaction with us as human beings. And so I'm having a blast with this series. I get to kind of geek out as an engineer. I do my own CAD drawings and I invent technologies. And so this is probably where I live and love the most is right here. And it's interesting though that my publisher was nervous about Christian science fiction, so they didn't accept the manuscript, and which was very disappointing. It was a crossroads for me as an author. I thought, well, maybe I'm done, But the Lord just said, Chuck, I want you to just do this anyway, no matter what it means. I'm not going to promise you anything. And so I pressed on with that first book, and the Star-Lord Legacy series has turned into be an incredible blessing. I mean, just beyond anything I could have imagined. And we're now looking at even a potential live action miniseries through GLU TV. And so all kinds of really neat things are happening because of it.
That's phenomenal. I think it's just exciting to see, your imagination coupled with the truth of Scripture and what it has brought to youth and young adults, who love to read fiction and who love to dive into these genres that are just so compelling. It's just encouraging to see. And it's even more encouraging to me that you are a representation of someone who was really just following kind of where God was leading you down this path in order to provide this, for others. Because like you said, it wasn't your first love. It wasn't your place you were aiming for. And you were pursuing your other passions, which I think is incredible. And God was blessing you in those areas. But, how it speaks to us to hear the story of those places where we're like, do we really want to go there? Coupled with how much your children can bring you to a place of learning more, doing more, creating more to help them, too. And how that's going to impact your kids. Are any of your children interested in writing, and are they creators?
They are, actually. I have two of them have actually written books. They haven't gotten them fully published yet, but they're all actually really good writers. Honestly, I think some of them are better than me. Honestly, they just haven't had the opportunity to get it out there yet. So, and the truth is I didn't really teach them that much. Our writing program was a little bit lackluster, but they just seemed to have it anyway. And so, yeah, they've really enjoyed that. And, the interesting thing, you made a great comment there about, about wanting to minister to my kids. I thought I was giving up so much when I left the Air Force to do that. And yet the Lord had in store 10 times more than that for me. So just encouragement to people out there. when the Lord calls you to be obedient and it seems like it's difficult, just lean into Him and walk in that faith, because He has got amazing things in store for you. And I think He's just oftentimes testing our heart to see if we will be follow Him in obedience. And sometimes that obedience is hard, but the reward is so great. It's just incredible. I've been blessed far beyond anything I could ever ask or imagine. And it's not been easy. I mean, I'm not going to say this has all just been a walk in the garden here, but but all in all, just following the Lord is just it's you'll never have regrets in being obedient to the Lord.
Well, and I know that you speak into the lives and the hearts of fathers a lot. What do you feel like is the most challenging thing for them right now in our current culture and society to be able to take those steps into turning their hearts back toward home and being there?
Wow, that's a really good question. There are so many things pulling for our attention, vying for our focus, our energies, our money. And the truth is that being fully dedicated to being the godly husband and the godly father that you want to be doesn't sound like a very glorious thing. But I share with dads out there that it is the most noble. It's the most noble duty you will ever have in your life if you do it well. And it may feel like you're giving up a lot, but that's not. God's economy is upside down compared to the world, and He will respond in kind. And I just want to encourage men to just go against the tide of this culture and humble yourself to be that servant leader in your home and in your marriage. And there's stepping into that role of not just leading, but being a spiritual leader in your home has eternal consequence. You will change the destiny of many people, hundreds, thousands even, because of the legacy you leave in your role as a spiritual leader in your home. And it doesn't have to be some cosmic, wild, thing. It's as simple as leading your family in prayer. It's as simple as helping get everybody up and ready to get to church, be the motivating force behind getting them into a fellowship that worships God and serving as a family in that capacity, and just stepping into that role. And for me, honestly, as an introvert, a pretty severe introvert, that was very uncomfortable. It took me years, and it's not easy, but I'm telling you, the Lord is looking for a heart like that. And men, if you just are willing to step into that role, He will bless you beyond measure.
And, I think it's funny because I look at the young men and the boys who read your stories. And I really believe that there's a generation of youth that are going to come up and grow into that space that are being raised in such a way to see things that way, to think about things that way. There was a generation of men that missed that, though, because they weren't being fed that. Do you find, I know for sure because I hear it, I know moms read your books. Moms listen to your books. And I know moms embrace those tenets and want to teach their children as well, and kind of encourage that. Do you have any conversations much with dads who read your books?
I do. Yeah. Especially the dads that are reading the books out loud for their kids, right?
Yeah.
That's what we encourage the most is using these books as read alouds. And there's when I write these, people think, well, they're for kids. Well, they're really not. They're for kids and adults.
Oh, yeah.
And I've woven into them a lot of the elements that just strike those chords inside a man to rise up and be noble. And I think that when dads read these to their kids, they'll feel that resonating inside them. And I've had some dads just get like this incredibly excited and will say, Chuck, you got page 128 on Sir Kendrick, you got this, where did you get this? And, so excited and so enthusiastic. So
that's fun.
A lot of times, for dads to read a story out loud to their kids is a little bit rare.
Mm-hmm.
But there's such blessing in it. There's such gold if you can get the right story and you can engage them in conversations like throughout the day. And at nighttime when you're tucking them in bed, some of these things will spill back out of their hearts, and you can just use those to just take them a little closer to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so, I've had moms and dads and even grandpas and grandmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's, it is great because they're stories that everyone, like you said, everyone can appreciate them once they dive into that and read. But, sometimes I know it's a lot of the times moms doing the reading because dads are working and, so many things that you say distract us, and that's the truth. And I believe that's a tool of the devil for the fathers to be so distracted from their homes and so removed. Honestly, for, this next generation of young people, men and women that we're raising. But I do appreciate your stories, and I do appreciate the way that they point any reader back to the gospel and back to the truth and the nature of who Christ is. And
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been such a blessing. And it is always so amazing to me that it was just like an accidental thing in your life, because it's just like, you couldn't have been more, perfect for this whole generation of kids to have access to this kind of interesting adventure, knowledge, encouragement, just everything that it brings to them. So tell me, before we wrap up, what you're doing right now that you're working on that might be your most exciting thing, even if it has nothing to do with any of your characters or books. What are you working on these days?
Well, the thing that's consuming the most in the literary world is the Starlar Legacy still. I've programmed that out as a 12-book series, and I've just finished the manuscript on book 8, Journey, which we'll be releasing in March, mid to late March.
Okay.
So that's exciting. I'm also all the audiobooks, of course. We do all the production here, so that's a big effort as well. But I'd say that the thing that is going to quickly be even overshadowing that is the activity that's happening around creating the Starlar Legacy into a live action miniseries through GLU TV. My producer, Jess Stainbrook, is leading the charge on that. There's incredible energy, effort, and finances are starting to line up. So Jess has been working on getting my books to film for probably 12 years now, and this is really close. And so I just would really be appreciative of any prayers that you or your listeners would send our way in this effort. We want it to be done right. We want it to be a Christian series, television series that is honoring, but is also of the highest quality. Otherwise, I'd rather just not have it happen.
Right.
But we're just being patient on the Lord and making sure that it's all within His timing and His will. So that's a big part of it. The other half of my life outside of the literary world is I am the CEO of a chemical injection automation company that when my brothers and my father retired back in 2014, I was left trying to figure out what to do because I still had a bunch of kids in high school. And so we started this company, and it's just, God has just blessed it, and we've grown. We've got about 30 employees now. I've hired 5 of my 6 children back into it after they graduated out of college. So there's a lot of grandchildren's mouths that are depending on the success of this, but God has continued to bless it. And it's just, I figured at one point I was either going to be all author or all engineer, but that is just not what the Lord has in store for me. So I'm working both ends of the candle here, trying to keep things going. And it's very consuming for me. It's staying very, very busy. And that company continues to grow 40, 30, 20% each year. And so we're getting an international market now. And so it's a lot happening. More patents, more inventions happening there. So
that's incredible.
So that's a lot to keep me going.
Well, that's amazing. It's just so encouraging to see how God blesses your passions and in the things that just drive your heart. And at the same time, when you're obedient to Him, He's blessing you in these other ways and other unexpected ways, right? So, Well, I love to ask this question of you. You know, you've been through a lot of challenging times, and times I know that you walked through where you weren't really sure what the next steps were going to look like. Obviously, some unexpected places popped up, but when you're talking to people who are interested in pursuing their passions and dreams, whether it's writing or something else, how do you encourage them to get through that? What resonates in your heart or in your mind when you go through those times that you share with others?
So obviously there's, as you mentioned, there's ups and downs to all of this. And I guess a couple of things come to mind, Suzanne, is first of all, set goals. I mean, just statistics has shown and research has shown that by setting goals, your chances of achieving things is like 10 times, so set goals. But set your goals bathed in prayer. I think even when things didn't necessarily make sense to me, just taking that quiet time and listening to the whispers of God, and sometimes discerning those whispers can be difficult. But oftentimes, I've noticed that when He whispers, it always aligns with Scripture. It doesn't usually align with my own feelings, and that's really the kind of the telltale sign. It's like, that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then submit to that in obedience, and obviously also take into, besides prayer and Scripture, but the biblical counsel of others, which I've sought throughout my life. And so those things there. And then you do have to do the hard work. I would say one of the themes of my life has been Colossians 3:23. Whatsoever you do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto man. So make sure that your motivations are not man-driven. Make sure that they're God-driven, and sometimes that will be in contrast to culture or contrast to man. But whatever you do, man, give it your all. I honestly feel like a very, very average and maybe even below average man. But one thing that I have been throughout my life is tenacious, and I think that ties into that verse. I've always felt motivated that my hands and my labor would be a gift to the Lord, and to that He would use them for His purposes and His kingdom, and that provides a lot of internal motivation for me that I can't get from any other source. And so, whatever you do, even if it doesn't feel like it's what you want to be doing or what is going to lead you toward the accomplishment of your goal, give it your all. Do it as though the Lord is going to show up at the end of the day and inspect your work. And that's been my driving force.
I actually really love that. Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.